Hello, everybody. Welcome to Seeing is Believing and Learning. This is an AAC webinar about access and aided language input for AAC users. Access, modeling, communication opportunities, and core vocabulary are the 4 AAC best practices. There has been a significant amount of research over the past decade, 2 decades, on individuals that use AAC or AAC users. These 4 best practices have kind of emerged as what we kind of call the gold standards. So if you keep these 4 best practices in mind while becoming familiar with your AAC user's system, you'll feel overwhelmed, but keeping these 4 things in mind will help you to realize that this journey isn't as complex as it at first appears. So best practice number 1 is access. So when we're talking about access, we talk about when you learn a language, you have to have access to that language. We don't expect babies to learn to talk without giving them access to hearing and interacting with the language that we expect them to speak in. We don't expect our deaf and hard of hearing people to start using sign language without signing to them and showing them that language, immersing them in that language. So with the same respect, we shouldn't expect our AAC users to start to communicate with us in symbolic language if we're only communicating with them in symbolic language for 20 minutes a week or 30 minutes once a week or even an hour a day. We have to have their systems out and available. They have to be accessible all day, every day, across environments, and we have to be using them. Best practice number 2 is modeling or aided language input. We are going to talk to our babies, to our kids, to our AAC users, modeling the language, their symbolic language, as we're talking. We don't have to show them every single word that we're speaking. We expose them to the language, just like we would talk to babies. And we highlight what we're saying as we're saying it. So, for example, if I were playing with a kiddo during a session and they were stimming and they were really happy, and I knew that was their expression of feeling happy, and I was, just trying to be in the moment with them, having a connection. I could have their device out and I could have their feelings page open, and hopefully you can see this, and I might just be hitting, "Oh, you feel happy." And I'm hitting that button. I'm just modeling happy, the word happy. So we're using the system. We are using it as the coach or the model. And the system's out and it's available, and we are hitting it. We are the ones accessing it. We're showing our AAC users that this is a language that's okay, that's accepted, and there's no expectation on them to use it yet, and that's modeling. The next big best practice is vocabulary. As you're modeling a device, you're going to start to notice that you're using a lot of the same words over and over and over. A lot of these words we consider our core vocabulary words. So this is our best practice for core vocabulary. Core vocabulary makes up approximately 80% of the words that we use, and consists of about 200 words. Effective AAC systems or robust AAC should be balanced so that it has a core vocabulary component. Yes, no, more, on, go, that. Those are examples of core vocabulary words. We also want to make sure that we have our nouns and our fringe vocabulary, our, Elmo, bubbles, car, pizza, goldfish crackers should also be included. And some of this is going to be more personal to your kiddo or your AAC user. But the emphasis should always be on teaching and modeling that core vocabulary, because it's going to be the most frequently used, and it's accessible. It can be used across a lot of situations and with a wide variety of communication partners. The last gold standard practice here is communication opportunities. Just exposing people to language isn't enough to learn it. So we have to provide our users time to practice. So we have to acknowledge all communication attempts. So any attempt to make a sound, any attempt to reach, those are all attempts, and we're modeling the symbols when those attempts are made, and we're accepting any attempt to communicate. That builds rapport, that builds confidence, and we're all multimodal communicators. But we need, in order for an AAC system to be effective, we need to provide about 200 opportunities a day for our users to practice. So that's typically not going to happen in a 20 or 30-minute session. And it needs to happen in situations that, you know, your kiddo's engaged in or are familiar, and when they're regulated. So sticking with these foundational practices, you'll start to develop confidence in yourself. You'll start to learn the system, and you'll be a good communication partner for your AAC user. It can take a full year for a baby to say their first word, and we all know this. It could take up to a year or longer before your AAC user decides they want to try to use their system. I've sat and I've modeled for months, and before somebody has been engaged with my, you know, with a system, and I've seen kids get engaged, you know, within a couple sessions. But just know that what you're doing isn't time wasted. So access means that individuals should be able to touch, interact with, use their AA systems. It just needs their AAC systems, sorry. They need to be out. They need to be available at all time. So for my families, I try to say, you know, the first thing when you get your system or when you decide that you're going to start this journey is don't even worry about what you're going to teach your kids or how you're going to start using this. The first thing is practice just making sure it's out and available and ready to go. And when you have checked, you know, a couple weeks, and every time you look, yes, it's out and it's ready and we are ready to model. And every time you check and look, you know, you've left for the grocery store and it's with you, you've mastered access. If you can check 8 times throughout the day and the system is out, accessible, ready to go, you're good to go. They shouldn't be in backpacks. It shouldn't be on shelves. It shouldn't be, you know, if it needs to be charged, is there a backup available? So as you're troubleshooting this first step, you'll start to see, oh my gosh, you know, we're really messy when we brush our teeth and wash our hands. So we might want just a picture of their homepage and some fringe vocabulary in the bathroom. And we're just going to, you know, have a low tech version in the bathroom so that it's not getting all wet. And then maybe, you know, we have core words of our homepage or low tech backups, you know, in different rooms throughout the house. You might find that it's easier to use flip books for certain things, or, you know, the device is easier in certain situations. You know, you'll all find different tricks and, you know, shortcuts per se for access. But taking the time to kind of just learn and develop that habit of this is our new normal, this is our voice, and this is how we're going to make sure that we're keeping track of it. Access is super important. It lays the foundation for all of this. Consistent access to AAC systems is critical to the learning and development of language. We communicate all day. Um, and individuals that are learning AAC systems need to have that same access so that they can communicate and learn their system all day long as well. Without consistent access, they don't get that opportunity to learn or demonstrate their knowledge. So access is really important. So again, what do you think what time of day do you think the most important time of day for an AAC user to have access to their AAC system is? It's all the time. We need access to communication all the time in all environments. There's never a time we don't need to communicate. The number one goal related to access is making sure it's out and accessible at all times. So this is where caregivers and parents and teachers, this is where visuals and reminders for us is important. Making sure that the team is on the same page, teaching all the individuals using the system, how are we going to carry it? How are we going to make sure, little Joey has a way to communicate at recess in PE, making sure it's durable, all of these things. So carrying straps, cases, accessories, when you're working with your assistive technology professionals, all these environments, your AAC system needs to be able to handle. It's very important. So here are some really great tips for access. So we can set visual tools, alarms, to help self-monitor access success. I've had, data sheets for families to kind of, set an alarm every 2 hours. When the alarm goes off, look and see, is the device out? Is it accessible? If it's not, what was the barrier? And, that first month, that's what we're troubleshooting. What were your barriers to access? Why couldn't you why didn't you bring it? Was it too heavy? Do we need to make a backup for this situation? But unless we keep data on your barriers, we don't know how to break through those barriers. Making sure you have charging stations set up and you have enough cords, in your car, in your home. And this is where you start to realize, when you're using it and it's out and accessible, how good is the battery life? When can I charge it? How often do I need my low tech backup? Which leads into number 3, having a low tech backup system. So if you're using an app, or if you have a high tech, dedicated speech generating device, there are lots of great blogs, and in the handout that comes with this webinar, there is a link to a great blog post that talks you through setting up a low tech backup book, for your communication device app, but always having a backup system. This is good for modeling as well. At some point, you'll be using your kiddo's device to model, but they're going to take charge of that. They're going to take ownership, and that's their voice and that's their right. You're going to need something separate to model on. For encouraging the AAC user to carry their own system. That's always a big milestone for me. That's the first goal is, we're carrying the system for them. But when they take ownership of it and they start carrying their own device, then, they realize this is an important tool. So number 5, trying to keep the device dedicated for communication. This is an interesting one for me now. There's a great Facebook group called Ask Me, I'm an AAC user. And this actually came up recently in that group. And I thought it was an excellent discussion. And while I do think that we need to have dedicated devices because our kids, can get out and they're so smart. If your kiddo is smart enough to get out of guided access and they're not using their device for communication, then there's a reason why they're not using their device for communication. And um, we should have a low tech backup to model on. And it could be too much sensory information at the time. But that's a choice that they have made, and we need to honor that. And we need to troubleshoot why they're choosing to be out of the communication app. So making it more meaningful for them. A lot of the AAC users in that group say they use, the songs that they're listening to are communicating a message, or maybe what they're seeking on the internet at the time is communication in and of itself. So again, going back to presuming competence, and if your kiddo has gotten to the point where they're coming out of guided access, there's likely a reason for it. I think we need to have dedicated communication devices, but at some point, our kids are going to be navigating in and out of apps, and it is a tool. And teaching them how to use the tool appropriately is part of presuming competence. So that was something a conversation that I really appreciated from that group. Accessorizing for convenience, making sure that you have straps, cases, screen protectors, stands, whatever you need to make it convenient so that you can access, your kiddo can access, is always really important. So what if we go somewhere, swimming pool, and we can't bring the device? There's, again, making a low tech backup. There's great ways to print like a core vocabulary board, put it into like a giant Ziploc bag, put it on like a floaty, so that there's some communication for the pool. You can make a dedicated page for swimming or the pool on your device, practice with it, and then, make a low tech copy of that to the pool. So there's, what are some other things? Oh, stimming on a device is the other thing, a big question that a lot of people ask about. Oh, he's just hitting buttons randomly. It can be stimming. I equate that, out of AAC SLPs equate this to babbling. Kids have to go through all these phases of language acquisition, and our symbolic language communicators are no different than our kids that are using verbal speech. They still need to play and learn all this language. So they're playing with symbolic language by pressing all those buttons in their spare time, and they're just playing. But that's how they're learning. Just like our little toddlers and babies babble and play with sounds, they're just doing that in the symbolic way. So we have to give them that time. I typically tend to see a language burst after, extended periods of what I call symbolic babbling on an AAC device. Why is access important? So when an individual with communication difficulties, a complex communicator, isn't given access to consistent AAC, then they're not able to learn how to use language. People start to assume that they are less intelligent because they're not able to express or show us, what's inside their minds. We get stuck in this loop. So people start to presume they're less intelligent, and then they're not given access to AAC because they haven't proven that they're smart enough to use it. So it becomes this bad loop. They appear they can't understand, so that they don't get the AAC system. So then we don't show them how to communicate because they have this sensory noise and this, motor planning issues. And a lot of people don't realize that our non-speakers, it's not because they don't have the words inside. It's because there's so much motor planning and sensory blocks that it's just too much work to get through. So they're stuck, they're locked in. So putting up this extra roadblock of this burden of proof is just very unfair. So we never know what a person is capable of unless we give them consistent access. So it goes hand in hand with presuming competence, and it's just the foundation. It's a great foundation. So again, this is somebody's voice. We can't take away our voices, so we're not going to take away our AAC users' voices. So the next gold standard here is our aided language input and modeling. So here we speak AAC to teach AAC. Modeling using AAC means that we use the communication system while we're talking to show how it can be used. So if I was saying, hey, Johnny, let me open this up. Hey, Johnny, let's go to the store. I'm gonna model go because my little buddy Johnny is a brand new AAC user, and he's not even looking at the screen when I'm modeling right now. So he's not even pushing one button. I'm just modeling one button right now. You can also model what you think an AAC user is trying to say, or what they might be thinking or feeling. So for example, if they're trying to make a request and they're pointing and they're looking, and that they want those goldfish crackers, and maybe they're really good at handing you the goldfish crackers picture card or pointing to it. But you want to attach a feeling to that. So you're going to model hungry. Oh, I feel hungry. I want goldfish crackers. We know that, little Johnny knows he wants goldfish crackers. Does he know why? So let's attach that feeling to it. You feel hungry. You want goldfish crackers. So you're modeling hungry. So learning a new language always involves a significant amount of listening and seeing that language, being immersed in the language before we start to speak and use that language ourselves. Modeling helps us learn the system. It's going to help us learn it. It's going to help the kids learn it as well. It's going to increase motivation on both parts. We are going to see so many more moments of connection. And again, when I get parent intake forms, that is the one thing that is so universal, that families seem to just desperately be craving, is the connection. So when we're modeling, when you're modeling, when I have parents modeling, it's showing your child that you accept their way of communicating. There's no better way to connect. So the best way to learn a language is to be immersed in it. Consistent modeling is important, even if it appears like your AAC user isn't paying attention. And attention is really important to talk about. So attention, especially for our kiddos with ADHD or who are autistic or might have, neurodivergent in any way. Attention is going to look different than it does for people who are typical. Typical people expect that attention is, eyes on, whatever the person directing the show wants the eyes on. For our neurodivergent people, that's not always possible. It's sometimes much better. And I have been told by, I've heard so many different things from autistic mentors and even just autistic kids that I've taken the time to listen to. Some of them get so overwhelmed by visual input that they will take one look at the office and then ask me not to move anything because they're going to keep their eyes closed for the majority of the session. They get all their input auditorily. Had people tell me that they can listen to me or they can look at me, but they can't do both. I have modeled where kids are looking mostly out of their peripheral vision, and it looks like they're just looking at the floor. And I feel like I'm talking to myself the whole time. These kids all make progress. I have just learned that attention looks different, and I'm not going to force anybody to look at me. If they are engaged, then that's progress. So we don't expect responses right away. Modeling is all about exposure. Big things here. We're pointing to touching symbols as we're speaking. We keep it simple for ourselves. We point, start. If you're brand new, you're pointing to one symbol. You can point to that same symbol for weeks if that's all you feel comfortable pointing to. Don't worry about mistakes. If you make a mistake, own it, say it. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. Let's find that word together. That shows your kiddo that it's okay to make a mistake and to correct or repair a message. Keep it fun and engaging. I've planned a million activities, and I've thought that it was within the interests of the kids I'm working with, and they want nothing to do with that day. And so we're, pouring water into different cups, and that's what they want to do. And that's fine. If that's what's fun and engaging for that kid that day. I've gotten language out of kids, about, I'm modeling, oh, this makes you happy. And they're scanning and looking for the word relaxing. I've had kids, we've gone through the words grow and teeth, and I thought that they had mouth pain, but they were trying to show me that they were asking questions about their tooth growing back in after it fell out. So follow their lead. Keep it fun. Follow the +1 rule. So this is a good one. So if your kiddo isn't engaging with it yet at all, you're just modeling one. So if you're just going to be modeling, one step. So go, we're going to the store, or we're going to go play. Say your kiddo is hitting one button at a time and navigating between pages. You're going to start to model, 2 words in a message. Like we're going to, you go. So you're always going to expand by 1. This is good. You're not expecting a response. You're practicing that 20-second pause after, if in seeing if they say something. If they don't, maybe model the next thing that you would expect. So you just keep going in this manner, and eventually you're going to start to see some engagement. So what do we model? Model what they're doing. Model really fun things: jumping, running, playing, silly. Emotion words and verbs are really great. Actions and emotions. Back to that Facebook group, Ask Me I'm an AAC user. About a year ago, there was a discussion in that group. The question posed was, what were the words that you wish you had had access to earlier, if you had had AAC earlier? And it was overwhelming. I wish I had been able to express my feelings and emotions. So I am big on modeling feelings and emotions. This also ties into research coming out on interoception, and that if we can regulate our interoceptive system, then we're able to engage better socially, and because our anxiety is, more under control. We're more self-regulated. So being able to identify those feelings and help giving that vocabulary sooner is kind of important. I feel like that's a great self-advocacy thing for these kids. So modeling emotion words. Plus it's fun. Kids really enjoy that. Making sure you're using, funny adjectives. Stinky. They love the word stinky. Smelly. Those types of words. Talk about what you're doing. Talk about how you're feeling. So I'm often like, if I'm jumping with the kids or running with the kids, all of a sudden I sit down and I'm like, oh, I'm tired. And I'm modeling the word tired. Model their nonverbal communication. So parents, you guys haven't been interpreting for your AAC users forever. Put those skills to use. Your kiddo's flapping, that they're excited, you're modeling excited, you start to see them getting frustrated. See if you can model that language before we get too escalated. Oh, you're frustrated, I'm sorry. And show where frustrated is. And then see if you can start to talk through that, give some language. And then you're going to use +1 to expand utterances. So add a word. So once they start communicating and they start hitting buttons on here and they're hitting go, then you're responding. So if they say see, then yes, I see the bird, and you're going to say see the bird or whatever, or I see, or so we start to expand on everything, and we get those bigger, spontaneous, novel utterances that we start to generate. Once they start to take ownership and they're not letting you touch their system, that's when the backup can be used, making that low-tech backup. If you're not familiar with the communication system, that's okay. I go through a few different communication systems, and if I go through phases, so I might be using Pro Quo for a while, and then I have to switch back to touch chat, and I'm like, oh, I don't remember touch chat right now, and I'm always rusty. Modeling is the best way to relearn a system. Stumbling around is a fantastic time to talk through those communication breakdowns. It's a great time there's search functions on the devices. It's a great way to incorporate literacy. So working on the literacy piece and spelling things out is really important, because all the words we want to model aren't always going to be there. So having this as a tool that we're showing our kids and modeling for our kids right from the start is a great strategy and a great tool. It's also a great pre-literacy skill. If all the words that you're trying to model aren't on the system, try to stick to those key core words. Don't worry about being grammatically correct at the beginning, especially. Don't worry about trying to say model every single thing you're saying. You can model so much with just a few core vocabulary words. Those first words, go, want, and stop, are very powerful. If you try to use what's there, especially at the beginning, and learn what's already in your system, you'll find that can be very, very, very effective, instead of trying to keep adding to, but that's also a great strategy. It just shows you're presuming competence. Don't worry about making mistakes. Start small. Involve your whole team, involve friends and peers. Siblings are some of my best modelers. They love being the modeling person. It makes them feel empowered, especially younger siblings. They love it. It's great for bonding too. You see this great connection start to form. Again, don't expect a response. And just make sure you're all having fun. Make it fun, keep it light. So very, very important. Stay calm, keep Common Model on. Modeling is all about exposure to language, as is access. This is second language immersion. You're immersing yourself, your entire family, in symbolic language. Being consistent is critical. Even if it appears that your AAC user is not paying attention, I promise you they are. You just have to believe that, and that's that presumption of competence. So it's very, very important to continue to model, even when you feel like you're being ignored. You're not, I promise. So good luck, and don't ask, don't test, start to connect. Thank you.